Is there a white genocide in South Africa?
No, there's no sign of it, never has been. In fact, whites are economically the strongest group. They benefited from democracy more than anybody else. 64% of all boardrooms in South Africa are still white. The average income of white South Africans are vastly higher than black South Africans. No. They have better schools, they have better education, they have private health care. This is the land of milk and honey if you're white.
Has any land been expropriated in South Africa without compensation since the first all-race election in this country?
I'm not aware of anyone. Not a single farm that I'm aware of was expropriated without compensation since 1994.
So how do we interpret President Trump's executive order?
It is possible that South Africa has offended the United States with his policy on the Palestinians, and it could be that with his policy on Russia, the ambiguities of those policies and its relationship with the Chinese. It could be. I think that does play a role. But there was something very, very sensitive that was touched upon. And in South Africa, right-wing groups, so-called civil society groups, we know that they have access to the Trump administration because they claim that. And if you listen to what Trump has said, it corresponds exactly with the genocide narrative that they sell and that they market, and that whites are victims of the democratic system and the constitution of South Africa and legislation. So there's an overlay, there's an immediate overlay, there's an unquestionable overlay between what Trump says and these right-wing groups have said. So I'm afraid I have to believe them when they say they have direct access to the Trump administration, and we see it in what Trump has been doing.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving into a critical and often contentious topic, land ownership in South Africa and the recent developments surrounding the Expropriation Act of 2024. Let's explore the historical context, current statistics, and the implications of this significant piece of legislation. To understand the present, we must first look to the past. Under apartheid, a series of laws systematically dispossessed black South Africans of their land. The 1913 Natives Land Act, for instance, restricted black ownership to just 7% of the land, despite them comprising the majority of the population. Fast forward to today, and disparities persist. As of 2024, white South Africans, who make up about 8% of the population, own approximately 72% of private farmland. Black South Africans, constituting around 80% of the population, own less than 10% of the land. These figures highlight the enduring legacy of historical injustices and the pressing need for equitable land redistribution.
You might remember this from the jargon of the economic freedom fighters: land expropriation without compensation. President Cyril Ramaphosa has finally signed the Land Expropriation Bill. Let's break it down. Ramaphosa has signed the Land Expropriation Bill into law, which provides for the expropriation of land without compensation. The law provides instances where land can be expropriated without compensation if it is deemed to be in the interest of the public. Meaning, if someone owns a portion of land that is deemed to be suitable for housing or any other public interest, the land can be expropriated with no compensation. When the motion was proposed in the National Assembly in 2022, it was rejected by the DA, its cousin, the IFP, and the FF+. According to this bill, government may not expropriate land or property arbitrarily or for the purpose of anything other than the public interest or for public purposes. This is different from the EFF's version of the land expropriation without compensation. In the EFF's version, the land must be placed under the ownership of the state, which will then redistribute it equally to make sure that South Africans have land for residential and productive use. The Ramaphosa Land Expropriation Bill and the EFF's version are not the same. Hence, the EFF has come out labeling the Ramaphosa Bill as a parody and a mockery to poor South Africans. You are probably wondering, why would government take someone's land and not pay them for it? Well, the answer is in the history of land in South Africa. It is because land is not theirs in the first place. It was stolen and therefore constitute as stolen property that was determined by a number of laws under the colonial rule. When you have been driving a stolen car for so long, That you passed it to multiple generations, it doesn't negate the fact that the car was stolen and remains a stolen property. The big question is, will we actually see land being expropriated? Or this is just another trick of Cyril Ramaphosa to act like he's going with the crowd when he's actually backstepping?
In January 2025, President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law the Expropriation Act of 2024. This legislation aims to address land inequalities by allowing the government to expropriate land for public purposes or in the public interest, with provisions for nil compensation under specific circumstances. Key points of the act include: expropriation must serve a public purpose or interest, such as land reform or equitable access to natural resources. Nil compensation is considered only in particular cases such as abandoned land, land held for speculative purposes, land where the state has invested more in improvements than the property's value. It's crucial to note that this act replaces the Apartheid-era Expropriation Act of 1975, aligning the law with South Africa's constitutional values. The necessity for land reform stems from the need to rectify historical injustices and promote socioeconomic equity. The Expropriation Act seeks to facilitate access to land for marginalized communities, promote agricultural development and food security.
You may have missed this, it's not been on the news. So in South Africa, the South African government and South African president have just signed off on a law which makes it legal for land seizures or land expropriation, as they call it, from white farmers. Basically what this law says is that if anyone can show that there's been any historical reason or historical abuse that's gone on by the landowners or by the farmers, even going back 50, 100 years when apartheid was in place, then that land can now just be seized from those farmers or expropriated and given to the South African black population. Now many people might say, well yeah, under apartheid this land was taken wrongly, there was abuse by those people, but that may well have been 50, 80, 100, 150 years ago, and in many cases the land may not have been seized, it was just used for farming. And yes, those grandparents or great-grandparents may not have been the nicest of people, but what this is going to cause is exactly what happened in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe used to be recognised as the breadbasket of Africa. It was a very agriculturally rich and very rich country, and then Robert Mugabe took it over, passed very similar laws, sorry about that, very similar laws which took away all the farmland from people, and it turned much of the farmland in Zimbabwe into dust bowls. It caused mass starvation, mass poverty, mass migration. It absolutely destroyed the country. And I would imagine very similar things are going to happen now in South Africa. There's been huge violence against white farmers that's not been making the news. Rapes, murders, burnings, pillage of those farms. And now that's just been made legal. So what's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is, other than the very, very toughest, all those farmers are going to flee their land. The farms are going to get handed over to people that don't know how to run them, don't know how to run agriculture properly, don't know how to farm properly, and they're going to fall apart. And that's going to lead to starvation, it's going to lead to poverty, it's going to lead to all the workers that currently work on those farms getting thrown out of work, and it's going to lead to the collapse of the South African farming industry completely. And yet that's apparently a good thing, and it's all in the name of equality. Well done.
This parliament can do, with or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are.
White South African couples say that they were attacked violently.
And then, when will you go and see for yourself if it isn't?
Well, I could do that. Look, here's burial sites all over the place. These are all white farmers that are being buried. And he asks about a jet that was given. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You know, you are so bad. You're such a bad reporter. This is one after another. This family was wiped out. I'm just looking.
Can we get a report from President Ramaphosa?
Your reaction to those videos, Mr. President?
Well, I think the videos are so. No. When you look at the videos, I mean, how does it get worse? And these are people that are officials, and they're saying that kill the white farmer and take their land. That's what it is. And I have other friends in South Africa. I have people that left.
Internationally, the act has garnered attention and, in some cases, controversy. Notably, President Donald Trump criticized the legislation, alleging it targets white farmers and equates to white genocide. However, these claims lack substantiation. Clarifying the facts. In 2024, South African police data reported 44 murders linked to farming communities, with only 8 victims being farmers. The Expropriation Act has not yet been used to seize any land without compensation. The law includes legal safeguards, allowing for court challenges to any expropriation decisions. These points underscore the importance of separating misinformation from the legislative realities. Land reform in South Africa is a complex and sensitive issue. The Expropriation Act represents an attempt to balance the need for redress with the protection of property rights. Moving forward, it's essential for transparent implementation of the Act, ongoing dialogue among stakeholders, monitoring the law's impact on both social equity and economic stability. Only through careful and inclusive approaches can South Africa hope to achieve lasting land justice. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of land ownership and reform